Every morning when you wake up, you face a decision. A quiet battle begins, not against anyone else, but within yourself. There's a voice that whispers comfort, excuses, softness. It tells you to rest a little more, to wait until you feel ready. But readiness does not come to those who wait. It comes to those who act in spite of discomfort. The truth is, the path of discipline is narrow, silent, and steep. No one will force you to walk it. No one will lift your feet. You must choose again and again to rise, to move forward, to force yourself, not with anger or aggression, but with calm clarity, knowing that the version of you on the other side of resistance is the one who wins. Discipline is the foundation of self-mastery. Without discipline, desire remains a dream, motivation fades with mood, and goals collapse under pressure. Discipline is not about forcing yourself with aggression. It's about choosing structure over chaos, choosing action over hesitation, choosing long-term meaning over short-term pleasure. Most people wait for the right time, the right feeling, the perfect condition to act. But those who truly move forward understand that discipline is doing what needs to be done, especially when you don't feel like it. The world doesn't reward you for intentions, it rewards action. And behind every consistent action is a structure, a decision, a commitment. That's discipline. You train yourself to show up, to commit, to stay focused even when motivation disappears. In fact, discipline is what carries you forward when motivation dies out. Self-mastery begins when you no longer depend on how you feel to determine what you do. When you can train the mind to honor its own word, you begin to trust yourself. And this trust becomes inner strength. People often misunderstand discipline as something rigid or painful, but discipline is clarity. It's a decision to move with direction rather than drift with distraction. It's the quiet voice that tells you to rise when the easier choice is to stay still. Discipline is the repetition of the right behavior, not once, not when you feel like it, but daily, in small moments that most people overlook. That's where true strength is built, not in loud achievements, but in quiet consistency. If your goal is to master yourself, you must begin with mastering your time, your thoughts, your energy. That is discipline. It requires awareness, knowing when your mind is pulling you toward comfort and choosing not to follow. It requires control over your reactions, your impulses, your cravings. It requires practice, because you will not get it right every day, and that's part of the path. Discipline isn't perfection, it's persistence. You fall, you stand again, you show up the next day, you show up even stronger. There will be days your mind resists, days your body feels heavy, days the voice inside screams to take the easier road. Those are not the days to surrender, those are the days that shape you. Every time you choose to act with discipline, you build resilience. You remind your mind who is in control. You remind your body who is leading. This repeated act of choosing strength over softness is what slowly sharpens your identity. You no longer see yourself as someone who waits. You see yourself as someone who moves, who leads, who decides. Self-mastery doesn't begin with grand goals. It begins in the smallest habits: getting up when you said you would, finishing what you start, saying no to what doesn't serve your higher purpose. These may seem insignificant, but they are the bricks of your inner structure. Each act of discipline reinforces your foundation. Each choice made in alignment with your values strengthens your direction. You become reliable to yourself, and that reliability is the beginning of freedom. Discipline does not seek comfort. It seeks alignment. Alignment with your values, your vision, your true potential. It's not about punishment, but liberation. You free yourself from the pull of distraction. You free yourself from the sway of emotions. You free yourself from the habits that keep you stuck. The more disciplined you become, the more power you gain, not over others, but over your own path. You no longer react, you respond. You no longer delay, you act. There is no mastery without discipline. There is no strength without structure. There is no greatness without consistency. You can have talent, you can have intelligence, but without discipline, these gifts remain untapped. Because discipline is the bridge between thought and action, between dream and reality. It is the invisible force that transforms desire into achievement. It is the force that gets you to train when you're tired, to study when you're distracted, to lead when it's easier to follow. And when you commit to a disciplined life, your world begins to change, not because circumstances change, but because your relationship with challenge changes. You no longer avoid hard things, you move toward them. You no longer wait for clarity, you create it. You no longer make choices based on ease, you make them based on growth. This is how self-mastery is forged slowly, repetitively, with intention and will. Not by controlling the world, but by controlling the self. Comfort is the silent enemy of progress. It does not shout, it does not threaten, it does not warn. It whispers gently, offering rest when you should rise, distraction when you should focus, ease when you should endure. It disguises itself as peace, but what it really brings is stagnation. The more you listen to comfort, the further you drift from your goals. It convinces you that it's okay to pause when you're meant to push, that it's fine to wait when you're supposed to act. Over time, this becomes a habit, a pattern, a lifestyle built around avoidance instead of advancement. Growth does not happen in the realm of comfort. Growth is a byproduct of pressure, resistance, and challenge. Muscles grow only when they are torn and rebuilt. The mind sharpens only when it is tested and stretched. Spirit strengthens when it is disciplined, not when it is pampered. If everything feels easy, smooth, and safe, then you are not evolving, you are settling. Comfort keeps you where you are. Progress demands you go beyond. It's not about rejecting all rest or pleasure, but recognizing when those things are becoming your prison rather than your fuel. There is a part of your mind that is designed to protect you, to keep you from danger, to avoid risk. That part often mistakes discomfort for harm, but discomfort is not danger, it is the signpost of growth. Every time you resist comfort, you train the mind to adapt to challenge. You teach yourself that difficulty is not something to run from, but something to lean into. The people who become exceptional are not those who are always motivated or fearless, but those who learn to befriend discomfort and continue regardless of how they feel. In every task you avoid, in every difficult decision you delay, comfort plays its role. It says you can do it tomorrow, or it's not urgent, or why push so hard. These questions sound reasonable, but they are traps. Comfort does not take everything from you at once. It takes your momentum first, then your standards, then your confidence. Soon, you begin to doubt your own capacity, not because you are weak, but because you've allowed yourself to stop moving forward. What once felt challenging now feels impossible. What once felt achievable now feels overwhelming. Breaking this cycle begins with awareness. Start to notice when comfort speaks. Catch the moment when you choose the easier path, when you pull back instead of lean in, when you entertain distractions instead of discipline. These moments may seem small, but they are the turning points of your life. Every decision matters. Every choice either strengthens the comfort loop or breaks it. And the more often you break it, the stronger your inner discipline becomes. You must teach yourself to value growth over ease, results over feelings, responsibility over reaction. This shift in mindset is what separates those who live intentionally from those who merely exist. The greatest breakthroughs happen right after the point of resistance, when everything inside you wants to quit, when your body aches, your mind argues, and your spirit wavers. If you can press forward at that point, you begin to reshape what you're capable of. Your threshold expands, your power deepens, your resilience increases. Choosing discomfort doesn't mean choosing suffering without purpose. It means choosing the actions that align with your higher self, even when they are difficult. Waking up early, showing up when you don't feel like it, saying no when it's easier to say yes, practicing when others are resting, working on yourself while others are wasting time. These are the uncomfortable choices that forge strength. They are not glamorous, but they are necessary. Over time, they become habits, then identity, then destiny. Comfort will always be there, waiting to reclaim you. That is why the fight against it is daily. Every morning is an invitation to either grow or stay the same. You won't always feel ready, you won't always feel strong, but you can always choose, and that choice compounds. If you choose discomfort today, you make strength easier tomorrow. If you choose comfort today, you make weakness more familiar tomorrow. It's never just one day. It's momentum being built or broken. Even when no one is watching, the fight continues, in silence, in solitude, in routine. The world might not see the choice you make, but your life will reflect it, Because comfort leaves no mark of excellence, only discomfort leaves behind transformation. Those who rise above average are not gifted, they are willing. Willing to do what is difficult, willing to resist what is easy, willing to sacrifice what is pleasant now for what is powerful later. Comfort feels good for a moment, progress feels right for a lifetime. The mind must be trained before the body follows. Every action begins with a thought. Every movement, every habit, every discipline is first born in the mind. If the mind is weak, inconsistent, undisciplined, the body will follow in that same pattern. No matter how strong your body may be, if your thoughts lack clarity, control, and purpose, your results will reflect that weakness. True transformation doesn't begin with what you do, it begins with how you think, how you perceive challenge, and how you respond to discomfort. The mind is the command center. It decides what is possible. It gives meaning to pain. It controls how long you will endure and how far you will go. If you allow your mind to be reactive, driven by emotion, or easily influenced by outside noise, you will never move with consistency. You will train only when you feel motivated, push only when you are praised, stop whenever it gets uncomfortable. This is not mastery. This is dependency. Mastery requires that the mind be trained to lead, not to follow feelings. Training the mind is not about shutting down emotion. It's about guiding it, understanding it, using it as fuel, not as the driver. The untrained mind will always seek comfort, distraction, and quick reward. It will avoid difficulty and overthink action. That's why the first battle is always internal. If you win the war within, everything outside becomes manageable. You no longer get pulled by fear or delayed by doubt. You develop clarity, a sense of direction that doesn't shift with every mood or external opinion. This clarity comes from repetition. You must expose the mind to challenge regularly. When you wake up early, even when you're tired, you train your mind. When you continue working while others quit, you train your mind. When you say no to distractions and stay focused, you train your mind. Over time, your mind begins to trust your decisions. You prove to yourself that you don't run from struggle, you run toward it. This rewires your mental blueprint. Struggle is no longer seen as a threat, but as a proving ground. Visualization is another tool for mental training. Before you act, you see. You imagine the process, the obstacles, and the outcome. This mental rehearsal sharpens focus. It reduces hesitation. You've already experienced the challenge in your mind, so when it shows up in reality, you are prepared. Elite performers in every field understand this. They train the mind just as seriously as they train the body, because they know the body will always be limited by the mind that drives it. Another part of mental training is learning to sit with discomfort. Not react, not escape, but sit with it. Let the mind experience boredom, pain, stillness. Let it learn that it will not break under pressure. When you avoid every uncomfortable thought or feeling, your tolerance shrinks. But when you face those internal storms, when you observe them without running, you grow, you develop emotional endurance, the ability to remain calm, centered, and disciplined no matter what thoughts arise. Affirmations and self-talk also shape the mind, not empty words, but deliberate statements rooted in truth. When you speak to yourself with strength, you remind the mind who is in control, I can endure this. I am in charge of my actions. I do not need to feel ready to act. These are not just motivational lines, they are mental anchors. In moments of pressure, these words become your compass. They remind you of your identity, your purpose, and your power. The mind also needs limits. Structure, boundaries. If you allow every thought to lead to action, you live reactively. But if you choose which thoughts to feed and which to release, you take control. Meditation, breathwork, journaling. These are not just wellness habits. They are forms of mental training. They help you pause before reacting. They create space between thought and action. In that space, clarity is born. In that space, discipline grows. You train the body by lifting weight, by repetition, by resistance. The mind is no different. It must be pushed, stretched, and challenged. It must face uncertainty. It must be reminded that it is not the master, but the tool. You don't have to believe every thought. You don't have to obey every emotion. You choose, and that choice gives you power. The more often you make that choice, the stronger your mind becomes. The stronger your mind becomes, the more unstoppable your actions grow. Because when the mind is steady, the body moves without doubt. When the mind is clear, your direction becomes unshakable. When the mind is trained, winning becomes a matter of execution, not chance. Small, consistent actions create unstoppable momentum. Big dreams often begin with excitement and energy, but excitement fades quickly. What remains is the discipline to continue doing the small things that don't always feel significant in the moment. The real growth, the true transformation, does not come from one massive effort, but from the quiet repetition of small steps taken daily. These small actions, done over time, compound in ways that are invisible at first but undeniable in the long run. Most people wait for the right moment to act, the perfect plan, the guarantee of success. But those who build unstoppable momentum understand that the secret is in starting with what you have and doing what you can, every day, without needing it to be perfect. One small action, waking up at the time you promised yourself, finishing a task you didn't feel like doing, showing up for your training even when tired, these are the bricks that build a solid foundation. They may feel insignificant, but over time they form habits. Habits create structure, and structure leads to momentum. Momentum is powerful because it reduces resistance. The hardest part is always starting. But once you take the first step and repeat it enough, you lower the friction between you and action. The mind stops negotiating because the behavior has become automatic. You no longer need to convince yourself to do what needs to be done. It becomes part of your identity. Small, consistent actions lead you there. They reprogram how you see yourself. You stop saying, "I want to be disciplined," and start believing, "I am disciplined." The mistake many people make is underestimating the power of consistency. They chase intensity. They work hard for a few days, then stop. They sprint, then burn out. But real strength is built through pacing, through sustained effort. Think of a drop of water. One drop means nothing. But repeated drops over time can wear through rock. It's not about doing a lot all at once. It's about doing a little every day with focus, with purpose, with commitment. In this process, patience becomes essential. Results don't come immediately. You may not see changes for weeks or even months. This is where most people give up. They believe their efforts aren't working, so they stop. But those who trust the process understand that progress often happens in silence, without applause, without visible proof. The small actions are seeds. You water them daily through consistency, and eventually the roots grow deep. When growth finally appears above the surface, it looks sudden to the outside world, but you know how long it took. How many quiet mornings, how many unseen hours, how many small, disciplined choices. These actions don't just lead to external success. They shape your inner world. They teach you to be reliable, to follow through, to keep promises to yourself. And when you start keeping those small promises, your confidence grows. Not the loud kind of confidence that boasts, but the quiet kind that walks with strength. You begin to trust yourself, and that trust is the fuel of unstoppable momentum. Consistency also builds clarity. When you act daily, you learn, you make adjustments, you improve. You don't wait for perfect knowledge. You learn by doing. Each small action becomes feedback. You refine your approach. You become sharper, more efficient, more focused. Momentum doesn't mean never making mistakes. It means moving forward despite them. It means learning while doing, correcting without quitting, failing without losing faith. Over time, the gap between who you were and who you are becoming becomes obvious. You no longer need to convince others of your path. They can see it in your actions. Your life becomes the evidence of your effort. And all of it begins with small actions. Actions so simple that most people overlook them. But you commit. You return to them daily. You keep walking even when it feels slow, even when no one is watching, even when there is no immediate reward. Because you understand that the journey is not about how fast you go, but about not stopping. The ones who build momentum don't ask for it to be easy. They ask for the strength to stay consistent. They choose effort over excuses, discipline over distraction, persistence over perfection. Every day they place one more brick, and soon what seemed impossible begins to take shape, not through bursts of intensity, but through the quiet power of consistency. Not through talent alone, but through action, repeated again and again. Growth lives on the edge of discomfort. It never happens in places where everything is known, easy, and predictable. Comfort may feel safe, but it is often the cage that holds back your strength, your discipline, and your true potential. Discomfort, on the other hand, is the signal that you are entering unfamiliar territory. That's where development begins, not when you feel ready, but when you choose to step forward despite uncertainty. When your heart beats faster, your legs feel heavier, your thoughts are clouded by doubt, that is where growth quietly waits. People often spend their lives trying to avoid discomfort, seeking pleasure, ease, and routines that never challenge them. They avoid the hard conversations, the early mornings, the cold, the silence, the failure. But in doing so, they also avoid the lessons that shape real transformation. Growth doesn't ask for your permission. It demands your sacrifice. It shows up when you're willing to be tested, to be stretched, to be pushed beyond your usual limits. And discomfort is the gatekeeper of that process. Without it, the mind stays soft, the body stays lazy, and the will stays unfocused. It is in discomfort that you begin to find out who you really are. When everything feels difficult, when you're tempted to give up, and when nothing is guaranteed, this is when you meet the part of yourself that doesn't back down. That version of you isn't created by comfort. It's built through trials, shaped through pressure, and revealed in struggle. The discomfort may hurt, but it also reveals your resilience. It strips away all excuses and shows you what you're made of. Every time you willingly lean into it, you grow thicker skin, a sharper mind, and a deeper sense of purpose. The edge of discomfort is also the edge of discovery. When you do something you've never done, push past a physical barrier, break a mental limitation, take on a challenge that feels too big, you discover abilities you didn't know you had. It doesn't come in the first attempt. It rarely happens quickly, but each time you face that edge and refuse to step back, you push the boundary further. What once felt unbearable starts to become normal. What once seemed impossible begins to feel achievable. The edge moves and you move with it. This is not about glorifying suffering. It's about understanding that avoiding difficulty only postpones growth. If you want a stronger body, you must put it under resistance. If you want a sharper mind, you must expose it to challenges. If you want to build discipline, you must do what is uncomfortable repeatedly without waiting for the perfect conditions. The process will not feel good at first. But comfort is deceptive. It gives you peace in the short term and regret in the long term. Discomfort is the opposite. It gives you challenge now and strength later. There are moments in life when you have to choose between staying the same or stepping into discomfort. That choice defines your direction. Most people wait for motivation to make hard decisions, but those who grow understand that discomfort is part of the path. They don't avoid it. They invite it, not because they enjoy pain, but because they respect its purpose. They've seen how every painful repetition, every early wake-up, every awkward moment of discipline pays back in growth. What you avoid controls you. The more you avoid discomfort, the more power it has over your decisions. You begin to shrink your goals to match your current level of ease. But when you face it, you take back control. You prove to yourself that fear, pain, fatigue, and uncertainty do not define your limits. You begin to live with purpose, not preference, with intention, not impulse. The edge of discomfort becomes your training ground, your battlefield, your mirror. It reflects back your character, not the one you talk about, but the one you prove through action. You don't grow by staying in the same place. You grow by doing what scares you. You grow by being challenged, by failing, by standing up again. And the only way to reach that place is to walk toward discomfort, not away from it. Every champion, every disciplined individual, every master of their craft, none of them avoided discomfort. They built their identity inside it. They found clarity in chaos, calm in pressure, strength in the struggle. Not because it was easy, but because they understood its necessity. So the next time you feel resistance, when your mind tells you to pull back, to rest, to choose the easier path, remember that growth is never behind that door. It's waiting at the edge where comfort ends and your real journey begins. You may feel fear, uncertainty, even pain, but that's not the end of the path. That's the sign that you've arrived exactly where you need to be. Winning is not an event, it's a habit, built moment by moment in silence, far from the noise, applause, or recognition. It begins in the decisions no one sees, the battles no one claps for, the hours of effort that earn no immediate reward. To force yourself to win is not about arrogance or external dominance. It is about inner authority, commanding your own energy, your own time, your own focus. It means taking control over the mind that wants to delay, the body that wants to rest, and the emotions that want comfort more than growth. Most people wait to feel inspired before they act, but inspiration is fleeting. Real winners act without needing to be in the mood. They know that consistency matters more than motivation. They wake up and train not because they feel like it, but because they said they would. They keep promises to themselves even when there's no audience. This is the deepest level of self-respect, to act with full commitment even when no one is watching, to push even when it's inconvenient, to show up fully even when everything around you tells you to take it easy. The mind resists this path. It will try to justify delay. It will say you've done enough. It will convince you that comfort is earned. But real winners know that ease is the beginning of decline, that every time you surrender to the inner voice of weakness, you strengthen it. Winning requires you to ignore the part of you that begs for shortcuts, that fears discomfort, that would rather be liked than respected. You must become ruthless with your time, protective of your energy, and clear about your purpose. Not for anyone else, for yourself. When you force yourself to win, you don't wait for opportunities. You create them. You don't wait for the right timing. You train yourself to be ready regardless of circumstances. You study harder, you work longer, you train smarter, not to impress, but to evolve. The question is never, how do I feel? The real question is, what needs to be done? Winners separate feelings from decisions. They act based on standards, not moods. They don't lower their goals to match their emotions. They raise their actions to meet their purpose. This type of discipline is not built overnight. It's carved slowly through repetition, struggle, and mental correction. You slip, you fail, you realign, but you never quit. You keep rising, not because you feel strong, but because you have decided you will be. Winning is a decision before it is a result. It is earned first in the darkness of effort, in the silence of sacrifice, in the solitude of consistency. It is not something that happens to you. It is something you become by the way you live, train, think, and respond. To force yourself to win means being honest with yourself, not lying to avoid guilt. Not making excuses to escape effort, but seeing your flaws with clarity and choosing to confront them with action. Winners don't pretend, they correct. They don't get offended by feedback, they seek it. They want to know where the gaps are so they can fill them. They don't wait for someone to push them. They push themselves because they know no one else can walk their path for them. It's their responsibility, their journey, their test. This mindset isn't glamorous. It won't always feel exciting. In fact, it often feels repetitive and lonely. That's why most people never reach this level. They chase emotions, not principles. They seek comfort, not character. But when you understand that winning is not about one big moment but 1,000 invisible choices made with discipline, your whole life changes. You stop blaming circumstances. You stop negotiating with weakness. You begin to operate at a higher frequency, not because you're better than others, but because you refuse to be less than what you are capable of. Everything you need is already within you, but it won't rise unless you demand it. Strength won't show up unless you summon it through effort. Focus won't sharpen unless you challenge it through distraction. Confidence won't appear unless you earn it through struggle. You don't wait for these qualities to come to you. You build them. Brick by brick, action by action, choice by choice. When you force yourself to win, you begin to carry yourself differently. You stop explaining yourself. You stop needing validation. Your actions speak so loudly that you no longer have to. You walk with quiet power because you've already fought the hardest battles within. You already know what you're capable of, not because someone told you, but because you proved it to yourself again and again. Through the pain, through the fatigue, through the doubts. And that is a type of victory no one can ever take from you.